The most feared demon lord in the universe becomes the most mocked employee at McDonald's after getting his ass kicked by the heroine. But this loser's problems don't end there, because she keeps chasing him down. One fine day, this king of demons decides he's going to conquer Ente Isla with his 4 overpowered generals, Adrile, Urushihara, Ashiya, and Malakota, plus an entire army of devils. This war between humans and demons drags on for years, throwing the world into chaos. Then the heroine Emi shows up and starts gathering rebels who refuse to surrender their homeland to the demons. These rebels grow stronger and begin taking back territories from the Demon King's generals. After years of endless fighting, Emi and the human army finally corner the Demon King and his generals. The Demon King decides to flee to another world to recharge his strength and plan his triumphant return. He opens an interdimensional portal and jumps to Earth. The Demon King and one of his generals, Ashiya, end up in a random alley in modern-day Tokyo. They step out into the busy streets and get hit with a harsh dose of reality when they realize they're now trapped in human bodies. 2 police officers see them and approach, thinking these confused guys need medical help. They offer assistance. Ashiya thinks the best response is to attack them, but the Demon King holds him back after discovering their magic doesn't work in this world. The cops drag them both to the station for questioning. The Demon King realizes he still has just enough magic left to mess with one of the officers' minds. He forces the guy to spill everything about this new world they've landed in. After gathering all the info, he heads to Ashiya's interrogation room, puts the cops to sleep with his remaining power, and updates the general on their situation before the 2 escape the station. They spend the night wandering the streets of Tokyo like lost tourists, trying to understand how this human world works and how to climb the food chain to regain their powers. The next day brings the thrilling adventure of getting legal documents, because even former Demon Kings need an ID to survive in Tokyo. On their first night in the new apartment, the Demon King collapses and ends up in the hospital, where he learns the humiliating lesson that human bodies need food to function properly. After being discharged, the Demon King, now using the alias Sadao, teams up with Ashiya to fill out job applications, since world domination apparently doesn't count as work experience. A few days later, Sadao lands a job and immediately spends his paycheck on basic appliances like a fridge, washing machine, and a bicycle, sending Ashiya into full-on nagging mode about money. Fed up with his general's complaints, Sadao bikes through the rain to get to work. He stops to hand his umbrella to a drenched woman on the street, then heads to his shift to change into uniform. The mighty Demon King now works at McDonald's, flipping burgers and taking orders while plotting his comeback through the corporate ladder. During his shift, Sadao takes orders and remembers his promise to Ashiya to work hard while the general researches magic. Everything seems fine until the lunch rush hits hard. As he desperately tries to keep up with the fries, Sadao breaks the fryer and considers using his limited magic to fix it. But the manager shuts down operations for repairs before he can make that questionable decision. Despite the mechanical disaster, Sadao still manages to get promoted to level A employee by the end of the shift. He rushes home to tell Ashiya the good news, but the universe has other plans when the girl he gave his umbrella to stops him mid-route and reveals herself as none other than the legendary heroine, Emi, from Ente Isla. Turns out, she followed Sadao and Ashiya through the portal, landed somewhere in Tokyo, and has spent her days hunting them down. Now that she's finally found him, Emi plans to end the reign of the Demon King with a $1 knife she bought at a convenience store. Sadao feels insulted by the whole thing and tells her to cut the nonsense, but Emi doesn't back down and charges forward to settle their old feud right there on the streets of Tokyo. The commotion gets so loud that someone calls the police, and the poor cop from the station gets fed up with dealing with these 2 lunatics fighting over what sounds like total nonsense. He gives them a basic talk about keeping the peace and lets them go. On the way home, Emi warns Sadao to watch his back because she's not done with him yet. The next day at work, Emi turns down a friendly invite from her female coworker to hang out, preferring to stick to her boring routine of coming home, eating dinner, and watching the same anime recap from the night before. She gets so fed up with the monotony that she decides to do something about it. Meanwhile, Sadao and Ashiya sit down to dinner when the doorbell rings, and it's none other than Emi at the door. Sadao sighs and lets her in, and she immediately gets irritated by the pathetic state of their tiny one-room apartment. She wonders how such a powerful demon lord can live in such a humble place. Sadao explains his master plan to climb the human class system and rise through all levels of society until he becomes the ultimate ruler of Earth. Emi gets tired of his grand ambitions and leaves for her own place. The next morning, her friend invites her out again, but she immediately refuses, choosing instead to stalk Sadao and Ashiya, because apparently that's her new hobby now. That night, she follows them to a convenience store thinking they're buying battle supplies, only to be disappointed when it's just regular household items. Over the next few days, Emi turns stalking Sadao into a full-time job and gets frustrated every time he does nothing remotely evil or world-conquering. One night, She walks into McDonald's to finally see what he's up to, only to find he's living like any other ordinary working human. Sadao's co-worker Chiho notices her talking to him and gets jealous. So after the shift, Chiho asks Sadao if he has a girlfriend, which thankfully he doesn't. Later, Sadao leaves work and bikes home, only to run into Emi again for the same pointless argument that's become their daily routine. While they're bickering, someone shoots at them. For the first time, the heroine and the demon work together to avoid getting killed. They escape danger and walk home together, where Emi swallows her pride and asks to stay at Sadao's place just for the night. Feeling sorry for her, Sadao lets her in despite Ashiya's warning. Emi settles in a corner of the room to rest, while Sadao grabs some supplies for her and gives her 1,000 yen in cash. Emi sleeps on the floor, wondering why the hell she even came here. Later that night, Sadao receives a message from an unknown number about upcoming earthquakes with no info on how to stop them. Emi leaves Sadao's place early the next morning and leaves some pickles on the table to thank him for the shelter. Sadao and Ashiya hesitate to eat them, suspecting they might be poisoned. When Emi gets home, she takes a hot shower and sits down to watch the news, where a reporter mentions a shooting the night before in part of the city, and an abandoned bike at the scene. Emi recognizes it as Sadao's bike, gets pissed, and storms off to work. Meanwhile, Chiho's face turns bright red with joy because Sadao agreed to go out with her. Turns out Chiho had a hearing problem and wanted advice from Sadao about what to do. She heads to a clothing store downtown to pick out a nice outfit for the date. At work, Emi gets a call from an unknown number. She answers casually at first, but things get serious when the caller addresses her as the heroine of Enta Isla and threatens to destroy both her and the Dark Lord. She tries to get some clue about the man's identity, but he hangs up before she can. Emi hangs up too and keeps working, thinking about who that person might be. After her shift, she gets a call from the police station asking her to come in and confirm Sadao's identity. Apparently, he'd gone there to retrieve his bike. Emi rushes to the station, furious at having to vouch for someone she absolutely can't stand. She bails him out and scolds him for acting like a child. After venting, she tells him about the threatening call she received earlier at work and hurries back home. Chiho returns from shopping and puts on a pretty dress for her date with Sadao. Meanwhile, Ashiya takes the date way too seriously and drags Sadao to a clothing store to get a proper outfit. Once dressed, Sadao heads to the meeting spot, where a cheerful Chiho joins him and they head to the mall for what should have been a normal date. Urushihara and Emi decide to tag along as uninvited chaperones, with Emi convinced that Sadao has ulterior motives for going out with such an innocent girl. While Ashiya only wants to make sure the king doesn't do anything stupid, the two of them watch the lovebirds chatting at the restaurant from a table in the corner. After a few minutes of surveillance, Emi decides to walk inside and take a closer look at whatever scheme she thinks Sadao is plotting. Meanwhile, Chiho tells Sadao about the strange sound she's been hearing lately, which immediately grabs his attention because he recognizes it as possible communication from Enta Isla. As he considers what it could mean, he spots Ashiya and Emi entering the restaurant, spits out his drink, and tries to pretend he didn't see anything. Emi heads straight for their table and tells Chiho to stop going out with Sadao, which makes Chiho think she's dealing with a jealous ex-girlfriend. As they start arguing over Sadao, an earthquake shakes the building, and the entire structure collapses within seconds, trapping Chiho and Emi in the rubble with no way out but through each other. With no choice but to cooperate, Emi warns Chiho about Sadao's true nature, explaining that he's not the kind of person she should be getting involved with. She senses Sadao approaching and puts Chiho to sleep before he arrives, ready to face him with her mysteriously restored magic. Emi considers ending him right there in the wreckage, but Sadao does something that completely throws her off. The demon uses his regained magic to save both Emi and Chiho, lifting all the debris from the collapsed building and creating a safe path for them to escape. Probably the last thing Emi ever expected from her supposed mortal enemy. After getting out of danger, Emi stands frozen, staring at the ruins, lost in childhood memories of Enta Ila, when she was just a farm girl plowing the fields with her father. In the flashback, a merchant brings bad news about lands conquered by the demon lord, and her father lies to protect her innocence, saying that the priest's prayers would save them from the terrible king of demons. Days later in the memory, high priests arrive at their home to take her away and prepare her to become the heroine of the land. When she arrives at the church, the priest reveals the truth about her origin. Her father fell in love with an archangel, and Emi, born from that union, possesses special abilities that can defeat demons and overthrow the demon lord himself. Sadao returns to his normal form and snaps Emi out of her trance. She quickly wipes away her tears and keeps a straight face to avoid showing weakness in front of him. Chiho joins them and thanks Sadao for the nice date before leaving. Before they part ways, Sadao warns Emi that the earthquake wasn't a natural disaster. It was a targeted attack against them. At that moment, Emi's co-worker shows up to pick her up, while Ashiya arrives and practically throws a celebration upon seeing his master alive and well. As they head back to the apartment, Ashiya drags himself along, apologizing to Sadao like a loyal dog. Meanwhile, Emi goes to her coworker's place and enjoys a decent meal. After dinner, the coworker gets a call from her mother asking if everything's okay. She reassures her that all's well, then thanks Emi for not snooping into her mysterious background and current situation. Somewhere else, Sadao and Ashiya get a warning about robbers from the police officer who escorted them from the scene of the accident. Emi excuses herself from the living room to change clothes. While she's in the other room, her coworker starts teasing her about her and Sadao, which flusters Emi and sends her running to the shower. There, she starts thinking about what might have been going through Sadao's head when he helped clear the rubble. After the bath, Emi goes straight to Sadao's place to return the 1,000 yen he gave her earlier. When she arrives and sees Sadao wearing shorts, she immediately throws a jab, which leads to the usual argument and emotional explosion before she storms off back to her apartment. On her way down the stairs, Emi trips and hurts herself like a clumsy protagonist, so Sadao drags her back to his room and tosses her some antiseptic, telling her to take care of it and relax. Emi completely loses it and explodes at him, demanding to know why he's suddenly playing the nice guy when he was basically a war criminal back in Ente Isla. Sadao tries to explain, but Emi breaks down crying over all the lives he destroyed, including her father's, making the situation painfully awkward. Sadao stands up and apologizes, which somehow makes Emi fall to her knees and cry even harder. Exactly at that moment, Chiho shows up to say hi and walks in on the scene of Emi kneeling in front of Sadao, immediately jumping to the worst possible conclusion before running off. Landlady Mikiti stops by to get their authorization for renovations in the room, completely unaware of the emotional meltdown that just happened, and leaves once she gets the signature. Several miles away, in an interdimensional portal, two of Emi's subordinates head toward Japan to investigate the surge of magic their sonar detected when it was activated on Earth. Meanwhile, Chiho crosses paths with a guy with purple hair who stops her for a chat, casually mentioning his plans to feed on her despair before sprouting wings like a wannabe anime villain. When this purple-haired psycho, who turns out to be Urushihara, starts demolishing buildings, Sadao, Ashiya, and Emi show up to settle things. Sadao approaches Urushihara, who challenges him to a fight that Sadao accepts, despite not having enough power to actually win. Elsewhere, Emirata and Albert, Emi's subordinates from Ente Isla, descend through the portal to find the heroine on Earth. It soon becomes clear that Urushihara had help from one of Emi's supposed allies, Ola. Emi can't believe she's been stabbed in the back like that, but Sadao puts the pieces together. Ola didn't want Emi bossing him around after defeating the Demon King, so the opportunist decided to ally with the enemy to eliminate Emi and steal her power for himself. Ashiya starts rambling endlessly about his master, which annoys them so much that Ola shoots him in the chest just to shut him up. As Ashiya falls, Urushihara thinks it's the perfect time to unleash his attack on the city, destroying everything in what looks like the biggest tantrum in the world. Sadao grabs his wounded general and runs for it, with Emi following the two as they all look for a way out of the supernatural mess. Unfortunately for them, Urushihara catches up and asks Sadao why the hell he'd lower himself to help humans, giving Sadao the chance to admit that, in truth, he's come to like humanity since arriving on Earth. This revelation only makes Urushihara angrier, and he responds by spreading even more chaos across the area. Sadao and Emi try to flee the fight, but Ola and Urushihara corner them with no way out. With no other option, Sadao decides to use teleportation magic to move himself and Emi a few meters away from their attackers. But Urushihara catches up and shoots him. Sadao collapses, looking dead, leaving Emi to face Urushihara and Ola alone. Urushihara, who's holding Chiho hostage, releases her and destroys the nearby bridge, spreading panic and fear among the trapped civilians. Sadao feeds on that despair and uses it to amplify his magic, transforming into his horned demon form and holding up the collapsing bridge above Emi's head to protect everyone underneath. Emi unleashes her own magical powers and transforms into the heroine, sacred sword in hand. Ready to end this conflict once and for all, she charges forward to strike Urushihara. But before the great battle begins, Sadao casts a spell on the surrounding people to make them all fall asleep, ensuring that no innocent gets caught in the supernatural crossfire. Emi gets the worst of it in the first half of the fight until Ashiya recovers and joins in, turning the tide in their favor. Together, they take down Ola and isolate Urushihara, allowing Sadao to lower the bridge safely and face his former general at full strength. Urushihara shrinks back at the sight of the once powerful lord and takes a complete beating for his rebellion. When the dust settles, Emi and Sadao get into their usual argument, with her asking if he plans to return to Ente Isla. Sadao chooses to stay and keep climbing the human hierarchy in Japan. At that moment, Emirata and Albert arrive through the portal to join the heroine. After the necessary greetings, Emi takes them to Sadao's place for introductions. Sadao undoes the sleep spell on the townspeople and uses the rest of his magic to rebuild the city, fixing the damage from the supernatural battle. Everyone gathers at Sadao's house for tea before returning to their normal lives. That night, Emerada and Albert prepare to head back to Ente Isla. Before crossing the gate, they warn Emmy not to get too close to the demon because you never know what he might be planning for the future. Even so, Sadao goes back to work and enjoys his shifts at McDonald's, continuing his mission to climb the corporate ladder one burger at a time. A few days after the fight with Urushihara, Sadao and Ashiya eat meat at a restaurant and think about bringing leftovers to their reformed enemy. But Ashiya says there's no need, since Urushihara discovered the wonders of online shopping and probably doesn't need their help anymore. Back in Ente Isla, the high priests hold a meeting to discuss the whereabouts of Emmy and the demon lord, assuming both died in battle and having already spread the story of her heroic death to the people. An informant brings news about Ola's betrayal and recommends secretly eliminating Emerada, Albert, and Emmy so no one discovers they're still alive, because that would completely destroy the church's narrative. Thousands of miles away from Ente Isla, Sadao and Ashiya return home with a bag of takeout for Urushihara and mess around by hacking his computer to make a prank call to Emmy's customer service line. After annoying her for what feels like the 100th time, Sadao heads to work, where Emmy finds him to talk about the situation that just won't end. Meanwhile, Ashiya keeps studying everything he can about magic, and by late afternoon, he comes back from the library with mail from the mailbox. Emmy asks Sadao about Urushihara's whereabouts, and he explains that the ex-general has been staying with them ever since Ola got arrested. Emmy gives her usual sermon until she gets tired and heads back to work. Sadao gets home after his shift and finds Urushihara and Ashiya looking like they're about to kick the bucket. After some investigation, he connects their condition to the letter Ashiya picked up earlier. Turns out, landlady Makiti had sent them a photo of herself in a bikini, which traumatized the guys in a completely understandable way. Sadao refuses to suffer the same torture and focuses on something else. Urushihara tells them about a myth he found at Chiho's school, so Sadao and Ashiya decide to check it out the next day. They search the school for any sign of the mysterious room, but find nothing out of the ordinary. Later, as they're getting ready for work, Chiho tells them everything she knows about the weird classroom. That night, she sneaks into the school and brings them along to investigate. On the way, she explains the supposed curse placed on the room, but Urushihara interrupts with a panicked call. When Sadao answers, he warns his boss that opening a gate in that part of the school would weaken the fabric between space and time. After the call, Sadao and Ashiya hear footsteps behind the counter and turn to discover that Emmy has followed them to the school. They try to run but fail miserably. They decide to hide in the anatomy room, where Emmy finds them and slices open a model skeleton right in front of them. She ends up joining the hunt for the cursed room, and they head to the abandoned wing of the school to find it. Sadao bursts open the door expecting something supernatural, only to find snack wrappers and a Game Boy scattered around. Turns out Urushihara had been living there all along and just used Sadao and the others as an excuse to get back to his makeshift hideout. They leave completely disappointed and furious at Urushihara. Sadao goes back to work and accidentally catches a glimpse of the landlady's vacation photo, turning white with pure cringe and fainting on the spot. Luckily, he survives the trauma and gets home safe and sound. Climbing the stairs, he notices someone leaving the apartment, and as he heads up, a woman with cat-like grace comes down the steps, slips, and falls into his arms like something straight out of a rom-com cliché. The next morning, that same woman visits Sadao and Ashiya to apologize for disturbing the peace the night before. Her apology comes with some supplies, and another picture of the landlady's glorious figure. Sadao thanks her for the gifts, and she leaves, probably wondering why these guys get so traumatized by harmless photos. Later, Emmy receives a care package full of vitamins sent directly by Emerada from Ente Isla and hops on a call with her to get instructions on how to use the medicine and supplements she just received. After finishing her check-in, Emmy gets back to her second job of the day, stalking Sadao and Ashiya from her hiding spot behind a fence, sweating under the blazing sun with just a bottle of water and a towel on her head. At one point, she overhears Urushihara and the new girl talking about clothes and decides to snoop around. She sneaks into Sadao's building and overhears Ashiya, Urushihara, and the new girl preparing lunch. But when the girl heads out, Emmy rushes after her, trips on the stairs, and lands right on top of Sadao, who, mortified, carries her outside. Emmy kicks him and curls up on the ground, face buried in her hands. Later, Sadao and Emmy are back at his place getting ready for dinner when the new girl introduces herself as Kamizuki Suzuno and asks for help adapting to their lifestyle, since her traditional clothes tend to draw attention. Emmy starts to suspect she might be an assassin from another world sent to kill Sadao, because at this point, anyone who shows up out of nowhere is probably from another dimension with an ulterior motive. Sadao stands up to wash his hands and brags about his upcoming promotion to assistant manager at McDonald's, which prompts another round of sarcastic jabs from Emi. Suzuno asks if she's into Sadao, and Emi, thinking Suzuno might be just like Chiho, fires the question right back. Suzuno takes her outside and starts asking questions about Sadao, which makes Emi warn her not to get too close since he's not exactly trustworthy. She even hands Suzuno her card, telling her to call if Sadao gets violent. Soon after, Emi leaves Suzuno with the guys, and Suzuno packs a lunch for Sadao to eat during his break at work. On her way home, Emi hops on another call with Emirata to update her on the situation with Sadao. Judging by Emi's tone, Emirata starts to suspect that Emi might actually be falling for the Demon Lord. Still, she warns Emi to stay alert for any agents the church might send since they suspect she's switched sides after living on Earth for so long. Around that time, Sadao gets promoted to assistant manager at the restaurant, another step up the corporate ladder. The manager tells him about a new competitor called Kentucky Fried Chicken opening nearby and orders him to make sure they don't steal their customers. Sadao agrees and heads to the storage room with Chiho, who finds out he's been eating lunch made by another woman and turns beet red with jealousy, practically melting in embarrassment. A few hours later, Emi stops by a convenience store for some food when a masked man suddenly attacks her out of nowhere. Emi draws her sacred sword and chases him outside, ready to handle things the old-fashioned way. But before she can make sense of the situation, she gets blasted by purple laser shots. Fortunately, the cashier scares the attackers off and brings her back inside, because apparently even convenience store clerks are heroes in this neighborhood. As Emi calms down waiting for the police, she gets a call from Chiho with the devastating news that Sadao is being fed by another woman. The next day, Chiho nervously prepares a meal for Sadao, trembling with fear and anxiety, and asks Emi to come along to deliver it to his place. But she gets the shock of her life when she sees Suzuno already there, taking care of the guys like some domestic goddess. With Emi's help, Chiho calms down and gets to know Suzuno, joining her in the kitchen to make breakfast and chatting nonstop with her potential new rival. Soon, lunch is ready, and Urushihara gets the tiniest portion, probably because no one trusts him with a full plate yet. While they eat, Suzuno mentions she's looking for a job to help with expenses, and Sadao asks if she'd like to work with them at McDonald's, completely oblivious to Chiho's feelings about yet another woman in the mix. Suzuno says she'll think about it, and when they ask about her wardrobe, she explains she doesn't own any Western-style clothes. Emi leaves for work after eating at his place. Soon after, Sadao and Chiho walk to work together, and along the way, Sadao asks what her parents think about her spending so much time with him. Chiho says they seem fine with their daughter cooking for the guy she likes. The conversation goes on for a bit until Sadao asks why she still chooses to like a demon like him. Chiho replies that she fell for him before knowing what he was and that she doesn't see him any differently now. Suzuno, who's been eavesdropping nearby, accidentally reveals herself, leaving Chiho mortified. She grabs Sadao's bike and rides off to work to escape the embarrassment. Suzuno steps closer to Sadao and asks how it feels to be loved by someone like Chiho, and Sadao says he thinks it's nice but doesn't dwell on it much. Suzuno says goodbye and later meets Emi at a subway station across town. There, Emi interrogates her about how she showed up alone, and Suzuno casually drops that she used a gate to teleport, leaving Emi stunned and now convinced the girl might really be from Entaila. Then comes the plot twist. Suzuno's real name is Christia Bell, and she's basically an inquisitor sent from the church to spy on Emi as part of a divine surveillance program. Emi tries to understand why Suzuno's cozying up to Sadao if she's already shadowing him, and Suzuno explains that the priests think Emi's become a traitor conspiring with the demon. That pisses Emi off, and she cuts the interrogation short. The two end up in a cafe, where Emi grows curious about how Suzuno knows so much about Japan. The girl explains that she did her homework and studied Japanese history, which explains her fondness for kimonos. She tosses in an apology for Ola being a backstabbing bastard and makes it clear that the church wants nothing to do with his nonsense. Suzuno insists on forming a partnership to take down the Demon Lord, but Emi refuses, saying she works better alone. She warns Suzuno to be careful around him, tosses her some magazines for distraction, and heads to work. Meanwhile, most of McDonald's customers have disappeared, now lining up at the new restaurant across the street. The manager of Kentucky Fried Chicken shows up to brag about stealing their customers. Sadao serves this smug jerk and lets him walk out in one piece. At the end of the day, Suzuno runs into Emi and her friend Rika as they're closing up shop. Suzuno brags about buying new clothes from across town for a few thousand yen. When they ask where the money came from, she casually mentions pawning off her jewelry like it's no big deal. Rika suggests taking the train to meet the guy in Lydia. Rika keeps complaining that Emi doesn't want to go, until it's clear she's already dragging Suzuno onto the subway. Whether they like it or not, the girls step off the train and head to McDonald's, which looks like a ghost town with almost zero customers. Rika sees it as the perfect chance to confront Sadao for being such dead weight in Emi's life. First, they stop by the Kentucky Fried Chicken next door to grab iced coffee and biscuits, where Rika gets stuck dealing with the creepy manager while placing the order. As they wait, Rika asks what's really going on between Emi and Sadao, but Emi keeps her lips sealed, afraid she might let the truth slip. When they get their order, the girls sit upstairs to eat while Suzuno tells Rika that Sadao is just a nice neighbor. Emi, on the other hand, unleashes every insult in the dictionary at Sadao like he single-handedly ruined her life. It's so brutal that Ashiya, sent to spy on Kentucky, winces at the verbal massacre his boss is taking. In a flashback, Ashiya remembers the noble farewell words his master said before sending him on this secret mission. Back at McDonald's, Sadao is acting as manager of the day, assigning random tasks to employees just to stall for time until Ashiya finishes the investigation. Chiho suggests putting up signs outside to lure customers back, a desperate marketing move. Across the street, Ashiya joins the girls and confronts Emi for verbally annihilating his boss. Rika introduces herself to Ashiya and asks for the tea on Sadao and him. Ashiya makes up a lie that Emi was just a temp worker at their construction company, Mau Incorporated. He explains that Sadao and Emi's rivalry got so toxic it tanked the entire company, leaving nothing but memories. Now, Sadao and Ashiya had to rent an apartment and, by pure bad luck, ran into Emi again. A year later, that story is still going strong, with Rika swallowing every word like an innocent fangirl. When Ashiya finishes his tall tale, Rika feels bad for Sadao and even calls him a handsome demon, which makes Ashiya thank her as if she meant it. Blushing, Rika decides to go downstairs to have a heart-to-heart with Sadao. Ashiya escorts her and Suzuno, who's been silent the whole time like a mysterious background character, downstairs while Emi stops at the counter to order food and gets stuck dealing with the creepy manager again, who spews useless advice. Ashiya reports his big discovery to Sadao. The secret is actually just the superiority complex Kentucky has about its organic food compared to McDonald's sad little menu. Ashiya grabs a pile of fast food for dinner and leaves Sadao to handle the girls because, as he says, he doesn't get paid enough for this drama. Rika finally finds Sadao and starts talking down to him like he owes her money. Chiho brings them iced coffee and introduces herself, and Rika immediately melts over Chiho's cuteness, hugging her tightly until Chiho, embarrassed, slips away. Rika keeps throwing jabs while Sadao gets roasted alive. Desperate, he comes up with a brilliant idea, using flyers to win customers back. It doesn't work. Then a delivery guy shows up with a bamboo sprout, which Sadao decides to use as interior decoration like some panicked amateur designer. Suddenly, customers flood in after seeing how beautiful the storefront looks. Sadao jumps into action, serving them immediately. By the end of the night, he successfully steals back all the customers from Kentucky Fried Chicken. The next day, the manager asks if Sadao wants to help her friend run the new food stall at the park. Sadao agrees. Chiho tries to tag along like a lost puppy, but the manager shuts her down instantly. That night, Sadao and Ashiya devour a huge bowl of udon, while Urushihara stays glued to his computer, searching for known openings in the park. The next morning, he discovers a haunted house is opening there, and starts thinking about going, claiming he could convert people's fear and despair into magic. Ashiya tells him to drop the computer and come eat, but Urushihara refuses, so the two start bickering like college roommates over chores. Meanwhile, Emi gets a call from Chiho asking her to go to the park with her the next day. With nothing better to do, Emi agrees. Chiho thanks her and hangs up. Then Emi gets another call, this time from Suzuno reporting her findings. Suzuno tells her it's possible the Demon Lord, aka Sadao, is planning to collect magic from frightened customers inside the haunted house. But Emi dismisses the theory, saying Sadao's probably just there to have fun like a normal person. The next day, Sadao joins his co-workers at the park, ready to serve customers. Meanwhile, Emi and Suzuno meet up with Chiho in another area of the park, and the trio heads to the changing rooms to switch into beachwear. In the locker room, Emi nearly dies of embarrassment when she sees how ridiculously well-endowed Chiho is. Suzuno walks in a little later, wearing an old-fashioned bathing outfit like she's about to perform an ancient ritual. Once they're ready, Chiho finds Sadao looking drop-dead gorgeous and flirty, hoping for a nice compliment, but he disappoints her completely by giving zero reaction. At that exact moment, Ashiya is struck with brutal diarrhea from all the udon he ate the night before. After an emergency trip to the bathroom, he goes out to buy medicine. After lunch, Chiho suggests Emi and Suzuno check out the newly opened haunted house nearby. They get up and go in, trembling with every step. Chiho chickens out and runs out faster than a coward on the battlefield. Emi and Suzuno make it to the first scare before turning right back around and finding Chiho outside. Chiho admits she turns into a scared little girl when weird stuff pops out of nowhere. They ask Suzuno if she's ever eaten reptiles, and she starts telling them about her first time trying reptile snacks back in Enta Isla. Emi immediately shuts her up before she spills too much about the other world. Next, the girls head to the zoo to check out the animals. While walking around, they run into a loose monkey who immediately falls head over heels for Chiho's impressive chest. The owner soon shows up looking for the monkey just as Sadao finishes his shift and leaves work. The girls keep having fun at the water slides near the river, where one of them dives with dolphins, until she spots a crocodile in the water and screams like her life's flashing before her eyes. Everyone bolts out of the river in panic. Sadao, however, runs straight toward the crocodiles, using the surrounding fear as magic to send the beasts back to the underworld. Suzuno wonders why the demon lord would waste his hard-earned magic to banish crocodiles instead of making things worse, but she can't find an answer. At sunset, Chiho heads home on the subway, where she notices a strange man with wings following her like a creepy stalker. When she turns around, he vanishes as if he was never there. The next morning, Urushihara receives an expensive delivery while Ashiya suffers from severe stomach pain from the udon. When Sadao gets home from work, he finds a mountain of stuff from Makiti. He and his subordinates try to figure out how to organize all the junk the lady sent because they'll need to sell some of it at the upcoming festival. Meanwhile, Suzuno stays quietly in her room, haunted by memories of her dark days during the Reformation. In a flashback to Ente Isla, Suzuno watches a group of rebels plotting to overthrow the church and enforce their own rules. She infiltrates their meeting, poisons their drinks as they conspire, then strikes and eliminates them all like a divine assassin. After the execution, Suzuno returns to Ola to complain about the church's incompetence in Ente Isla. Ola tells her to clear her mind and just complete the mission as planned. Meanwhile, Emi and her friend Rika finish their shift. Emi changes clothes and heads straight to Sadao's place. As she approaches, Urushihara's tracker beeps on his computer like some high-tech surveillance system. He warns Sadao that Emi's on her way. Sadao goes out to confront her, only to realize she actually came to see Suzuno. Soon, everyone, including Suzuno, is in Sadao's apartment, sorting through the care packages Makiti sent from Hawaii, which include some pretty bizarre items. After about an hour of organizing, everyone grabs a drink. By evening, they've finished sorting everything and put it up for sale. While the others chat, Suzuno suddenly gets a call, excuses herself, and meets with Archangel Serial, who warns her not to spend too much time around the Demon Lord. At that same moment, the elders of the church and Ente Isla hold a meeting to discuss recent events on Earth and in Isla, deciding who to blame for the failures and who to praise for the victories, like some corporate damage control session. Suzuno tells Serial she's tired of executing people and wants to take a different approach this time. But Serial orders her to complete the mission anyway. Divine orders leave no room for debate. Ashiya's stomach pain grows worse by the minute, so Urushihara finally calls an ambulance before his guts explode. Emi and Chiho head home after helping Sadao set up the festival booth when Suzuno catches up to them and warns them to keep an eye on the Demon Lord. She reminds Emi of her duty as a heroine, saying they need to finish him off before he attacks again. But Chiho stands up for Sadao, saying the man she knows is kind, warm, and always tries to help when he can. Suzuno keeps insisting Sadao deserves to die, but Emi cuts her off, saying they're not going after him anytime soon, which shuts Suzuno up, and she walks away without another word. Emi and Chiho sit on a bench outdoors to cool off after the heated argument, when Archangel Serial, who'd been posing as the creepy Kentucky Fried Chicken manager all along, reveals his true identity and attacks Emi to steal the sacred sword in a divine plot twist. Chiho calls Sadao for help, but he doesn't answer because he's still busy at work. After his shift, Sadao gets a call from Chiho's mom, asking if he knows where her daughter is. Sadao senses something's wrong and calls Urushihara to track Emi and Chiho. Urushihara locates Emi moving fast toward the City Hall building. Sadao rushes out, hopping on his bike like an action hero responding to a crisis. Meanwhile, Ashiya gets hospitalized and ends up sharing a room with Ola, who'd been admitted earlier. Ashiya wakes up in the middle of the night after a painful treatment for chronic diarrhea. The nurse comes in to check and change his IV bag. Ashiya steps out to get some air, but in the hallway, he finds a cop passed out on the floor. Before he can process it, Ola appears behind him and lands a surprise punch straight to the gut, striking like a boss in a sneak attack. Meanwhile, Sadao races through the city on his bike toward the City Hall building to rescue Chiho and Emi from Archangel Sariel, acting like a part-time hero on a full-blown rescue mission. Sariel traps Emi with sacred rings and fires purple lasers from his eyes, forcing her to summon the sacred sword. But since Emi's almost out of magic, the sword fails to appear. Her summoning spell fizzles out. Sadao reaches City Hall only to find a massive barrier surrounding it. He hears Emi's screams from the rooftop as Sariel's laser beams hit her over and over like a torture session. Sensing Sadao's presence below, Sariel orders Suzuno to handle him. She hesitates but ultimately obeys the angel. Sadao uses the last of his magic to blast a hole through the barrier and step inside. Suzuno descends to attack him, but to avoid getting his uniform dirty, Sadao strips down and fights her in nothing but his underwear. Suzuno attacks but quickly realizes he's almost completely powerless. She stops and tells him about Serial's immense strength, especially under the moonlight. Sadao says he doesn't care about the angel's power. He'll find a way to defeat him and save the girls. Around that time, Ola finds Urushihara and recruits him back to the dark side in a literal evil team comeback program. Meanwhile, seeing that Emi can't summon her sword, Serial decides to extract it directly from her body like a deranged surgeon. Emi warns him that Sadao will go berserk when he finds out what he's done to her, but Serial underestimates the Demon Lord, claiming he can't do anything without power. At that exact moment, Sadao bursts onto the rooftop, still in his underwear, and threatens Serial like a half-naked action hero. Serial laughs at his pathetic state and launches explosive orbs of light at him. Sadao gets thrown around like a ragdoll with no magic to defend himself. On top of another building, Ola gulps down Enta-Isla vitamin supplements and gains massive power. He uses it to pull the moon closer to Earth, feeding Serial cosmic energy like some kind of celestial cheat code. The plan works, Serial's power multiplies tenfold, and the abnormal lunar phenomenon sparks panic and fear all over Tokyo. Sadao and Ashia take advantage of that widespread fear, converting it into magic like a dark energy farm. Sadao tells Suzuno to rescue Emi and Chiho while he handles the renegade archangel, laying out a battle plan on the fly. Serial confronts Suzuno for following Sadao's orders, but she condemns him as a fallen angel and reveals the Demon Lord's true nature. Serial ignores her and focuses on obliterating Sadao with his amplified magic. But Sadao puts on an incredible fight and comes out victorious. He finishes by summoning a sword and sending Serial back to the heavens in what can only be described as divine deportation. After the battle, Sadao realizes he accidentally destroyed more than half the city with his final sword strike, basically becoming the king of overkill. Now he has to fix everything with what little magic he has left. Meanwhile, Chiho wakes up from a nightmare about Sadao, where he says goodbye and returns to Enta-Isla. She gets ready, heads straight to work, and tells Sadao about the dream, making for an awkward conversation during the shift. After hearing about the prophetic nightmares, Sadao explains that he's stuck on Earth without enough magic to open a portal to Enta-Isla anyway. In any case, Kisaki, the manager, calls a team meeting to question Sadao about his whereabouts the previous night. Sadao, Chiho, and Suzuno come up with an elaborate lie that Sadao saved the two of them from a mugging and sell it perfectly. The manager buys it completely. Then another employee bursts in, shouting that someone's been found unconscious inside the freezer. Kisaki runs to the back and finds cereal spilled all over the floor near the fridge, as if the guy lost a fight with the appliance. When the idiot finally wakes up, Kisaki is the first face he sees, and being the creep he is, he immediately starts complimenting her looks, earning a swift kick to the head. Somewhere else, Emi wakes up from her own nightmare about Sadao. Apparently, everyone's dreaming about him now. After her shift, she takes her supplements in the locker room, while Rika asks if she's going to check on Sadao again. Emi insists she's just going to observe the Demon Lord, definitely not check on him. Rika sees right through the lie but lets it slide. When Emi arrives at his place, she finds Suzuno feeding Sadao by hand. Chiho, upon finding out, explodes with jealousy, scolding Sadao for accepting food from another girl in the middle of all this chaos. Ashia returns from his errand and asks to speak with Sadao privately, giving him the perfect excuse to escape the drama into the hallway. He politely sends the girls home, saying they should all take some time to rest. Emi heads home wondering what the two of them are talking about and calls Emirata to ask if there's been any increase in magical activity on Earth. Thankfully, there hasn't been. The next day, it rains. Chiho and Emi get caught in it and wait it out, chatting about their recent dreams. Emi heads to Sadao's apartment and sees a van unloading boxes, which immediately triggers her paranoia alarm. She goes to the bathroom at work and calls Emirata from there, asking if anything weird is happening, because apparently calling from a bathroom stall is peak secret agent behavior. Meanwhile, Sadao switches shifts and takes a day off. Emi meets up with Chiho to tail him and figure out what he and Ashia are plotting, forming a two-girl detective duo. They follow him all day, only to discover that Sadao's just picked up a side gig at a construction site. Sadao catches them hiding behind a corner and sits down with them like he knew the whole time. Emi asks what he's been up to, and Sadao explains that Ashia said they're broke and needed quick cash to pay for the tracking devices Urushihara bought weeks ago. When Emi finds out they planted a tracker in her bag, she loses it completely, crushing the thing like a victim of a privacy invasion. After finishing his shift at the construction site, Sadao and the girls return home to find piles of junk clogging the hallway. Turns out, Urushihara went on an online shopping spree, buying tons of useless junk in a full-blown impulse buy disaster. Sadao finds the company's contact info and calls to ask if he can return the equipment, But of course, the company doesn't accept returns. Sadao and Emi visit the company building and find out the whole business is legitimate. The manager shows up later and explains the contract Urushihara signed, proving it wasn't a scam, so there's no legal way to get the money back. That night, Sadao comes home completely defeated, like a warrior who's lost his final battle. Emi asks about Urushihara's registered age, and together they hatch a plan to recover the goods. They go to the Child Protection Services office and use a cooling-off clause to void the contract and return everything, since apparently Urushihara's listed age makes him a minor. After saving 128,000 yen, Sadao and Ashiya celebrate their victory with a well-earned bowl of katsudon.